Welcome to another Bungie Ride-Along. This is a great opportunity for us to explore the playable spaces in Destiny and learn some of the ins and outs of development from the talented people who created the places where we go and fight and defend humanity. I'm Deej, I'm your friendly neighborhood community manager, and today I will be your host. As you can see, for this ride-along, we have chosen as our destination the Dreadnought. Up first, this dashing hunter is senior designer Brian Frank. How you doing, Brian?
I'm great, thanks, Deej.
Lovely bow. Good to have you on the couch.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the design destination owner for the Dreadnought.
Yeah.
And collaborated with Andrew and other artists, building these spaces, getting them ready to lay in the activity content and the player experiences. And I'm responsible for the 2 missions that we're going to play today.
Okay, so we'll be playing 2 of those missions as the breadcrumb trail that will follow through the destination. And then to balance that out, this hulking titan is senior world artist Andrew Hops.
How are you doing?
I'm glad to have you on the show, man. Thanks so much for taking time out of making games to talk about some of the things you've created in the past. So talk to us a little bit about what a world artist does at Bungie and frame up your contribution to bringing the Dreadnought to life for us.
Sure, I was the world art destination owner on the Dreadnought. Just making sure we take those concepts and build playable spaces out of them that are just incredible.
I'm sure that longtime fans of Destiny and Bungie remember the first time they saw this image. You know, it's deeply alien, it's hideous, but it's beautiful. It's definitely the sort of thing that incites curiosity. You want to get in there, you want to kick some ass, and you want to plunder it for its treasures. Yes. And now here we are.
Can I jump in and say that these postcards are part of a destination incubation process that establishes both the visual goals and also the player experience goals for the destination. So you can imagine as a mission designer looking at this image and being inspired to build encounters and adventures within that environment.
We can pull up the next concept.
Okay. Next concept on main viewer.
Concept of the cinematic sky battle at the very beginning of the game. Setting up the setting, Hive Saturn rings.
And then if we come back to our in-game view, you probably want to give credit to, like who created the space battle concept?
So that concept was by Jesse Van Dyke, and if we come back into game, you can see what Mark Goldsworthy's team did with that to set up the remnants of the battle on the Dreadnought.
So we've got the burning wreckage of these husks, these old ships. You've got the Awoken fleet. You've got the Hive fleet. It's all just a wonderful, beautiful mess, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love this as well because it's not only a exciting scene for the artist to paint, but it also is integral to the player experience. You know, the Dreadnought is an environment that you wouldn't imagine Guardians are running all over, but you know, we knew we wanted to have those social elements and later introduce the public space gameplay. And so this fit nicely in with that. It gave an opportunity to create a mission that was about establishing that beachhead, opening the doorway for the Guardians that are going to later be running all around the Dreadnought, and it sort of contextualizes that action and that player experience.
The player quite literally becomes the vanguard. This Dreadnought doesn't belong to us, so that was really a sense that you gave to me as a player was when I first went to the Dreadnought, dispatched sort of on a stealth mission by Cade, I'm the first person to go here. It made me feel far more important than I ever had in any other mission.
We'll throw up one more concept here by Frank Capizzuto. Concept for the opening cinematic. He's exploring the design of the lesser battleships for the Dreadnought's fleet.
The Dreadnought basically invites and rewards exploration.
Yeah, we just packed that stuff into the environment wherever we could. I mean, I even at one point created a list for every environment. I wanted to make sure that there was multiple off the beaten path areas that you could discover, find a reward, and then and the investment team comes in and they make those rewards real for players.
So one of the goals when we were building the Dreadnought was to really push the boundaries of the maps. So we end up with secrets like these ones where we brought in Ghostlink bridges to help players explore outside the normal play space.
Yeah, it was very intentional that pathway leads you sort of to the center or to one end of the far platform, because it sort of suggests you're going to continue forward, but if you backtrack, we've gone to the trouble of adding this secret that you can find and explore. And this also is interesting. These bridges have a really nice property, the proximity nature of them, where if I float it out into space, it's not going to reveal itself when you walk up. So it's sort of one tier of greater complexity and difficulty that's layered in for the adventurous player to go and discover a reward.
And then do you go? And so you do go as far as to tuck a reward up there, so that the adventurous player, like my eye is automatically drawn to this little piece of light all the way in the distance. Looks like we've got a culver or a little cave opening we can go in. So if I can make it there, if I'm clever enough to get there, I get something for my trouble.
Exactly, and that's critical. Like we want to have that loop, the mystery, the curiosity, the exploration, and then the thing that brings it back is the reward. And wherever possible, we put the best rewards we can give.
Cool. All right, moving right along.
Yeah.
I'm behind you, Brian.
And again, here I'll just talk quickly about this relatively simple design element here, where you're led into what's essentially a dead end at first glance. And as you begin to look around and explore the environment, you see a couple things. There's strange worms, and there's more space that looks like, it's probably playable space.
Yeah.
And it's just a real simple navigational challenge where, as you leave this dead end, you're going to hopefully notice this opening here that on your way in you don't actually have direct line of sight to.
Yeah, you obscured my vision with this
Exactly.
pile here.
And so this was carefully constructed to make players really feel like, oh, I discovered this route. It wasn't immediately obvious, and then there's a moment where they're not really sure where to go, but relatively quickly they discover the path forward. There's some enemies in here too that can draw your eye, and your radar can clue you into to where you're supposed to be.
It's pretty uncool. We're trying to lead a guided tour here, and they just won't stop.
Yep. It also is the first time an activity leads you through these interior wall spaces. We call them grub caves internally. That's an official term for those spaces.
Sure.
And
you guys always have your own pet names for certain creatures or certain spaces or certain player devices.
Exactly. And those are interesting. They came on sort of late in the lifespan of the Dreadnought. Andrew and I talked about, wanting to have as many of these exploratory spaces as possible, and went to the trouble of adding them everywhere that we possibly could fit them in, given our layout and our, memory constraints and whatnot.
And that's more of that desire to explain how these ships were built and what they're made up of.
Yeah, it's got a very organic feel. It's like you sort of can see secreted residues, and you can see, like just these faces here. It feels very bone-like. This is where Orcs gets his cable TV, yeah?
Yep.
Actually, what are these wires? Does this power the primary weapon? This is the gun that we're coming in here to disarm?
Definitely.
Maybe. Okay.
No one knows.
All right, we don't have a schematic.
Yeah, it's also a great showcase of, even in a destination that's essentially fully enclosed, we wanted to have a delineation between open and like exterior and interior space. That's part of the design language that the public space team used to distinguish the private dungeons to the public areas where you're going to encounter other Guardians. So we'll see other examples of that later.
This is actually my favorite place to bring gunsmith weapons, if I'm ranking up gunsmith weapons, because it's such a target-rich environment, different types of targets, and if I'm only hunting Hive, I've got a nice secluded place to do that. If I'm hunting Cabal, I know I got a nice endless supply of Cabal, and the Taken just appear wherever they want to. And there is my badass dead orbit Fermi Solution starship. Look upon my riches and weep. By this point in time, we have returned to the Hellmouth. We have used what remains of Crota to become Ascendant, and eventually we're going to go through that portal for some of our final encounters with Oryx. But there's still more fun to say about this space before we do that.
Sure,
So,
we've got another concept here by Darren Bacon. This was the view of the front of the Cabal ship.
you can go ahead and pull us back into the game view, and that's how it's realized. It's actually hard to get a good vantage point of all of the Cabal ship. You can see sort of the two tines that reach forward and then sort of the center structure. But it's such a massive thing that you've created, it's hard to frame it up with one view.
So when we're building this space, we are thinking about how it might have looked before the impact of the Cabal ship. And if you come on down here, one of the ways we're doing that is we create this sequence of architectural elements, and then we break that sequence where the ship impacted. You can see all these pillars that have been knocked over suggest they would have been repeating from this element over here.
Almost like falling dominoes.
Right. I got another concept for you in here.
Okay, let's bring it up.
By Dorje Belbrook.
Nice.
This is pretty cool. So he's exploring the shape language of the hive architecture aboard the Dreadnought.
Slanted ceilings.
Get some suggestions of how it'd be decorated.
Yeah.
You see the growths on the floor and the webbing or torn cloth.
And I've got that framed up in-game, so you can see how that translates to the final product. And we've got these cells that have been hung from the ceiling. What's the lore behind that?
Right. So I believe that this area is meant as a hive prison, and inside these prison cells we've got hive combatants, or excuse me, combatants of the hive that
Oryx's
they've
enemies.
captured and kept in here. But we can go into another concept here by Dorje.
Okay.
So here's exploring what those cells would look like. You can see they're embedded in the walls. If we come back to game now, we've got some that are out in space and some that are embedded in the walls.
Yeah, Deej, if you want to look down here, there's one down below us.
Yep.
Went to the trouble of making the covering on those prisons destructible in some cases.
Yeah, I just blew a door off of one of them. And then this is something I
Right.
actually didn't notice until I played with you guys. Let's
Right.
come back to our in-game view.
So I knew that made it into the PvP map, the dungeons, but actually, I gotta admit, playing, I didn't even notice that it was right up above us. If you look directly up, he is flying around, checking on all these prisons. We call him the Warden.
That's an actual sentient
Eerie.
being.
Sure.
Making sure no one escapes.
Yeah,
And then we've, of course, got this device in the center as well, which was meant almost as some kind of a torture device. If you think about it, you can see there's some prison doors right here, so perhaps there's combatants inside there.
Yeah.
And it's also got qualities like a clock, almost like it's a slow tick,
Yeah.
right? Imagine being in a prison cell and hearing that all day.
Like a tilted world that just never, ever ends. I think there's a special place in hell.
And I think this jumping section represents the pinnacle of the Invisible Bridge challenge.
Well, there you go. For you puzzle jumpers out there, prove yourself. This is where you want to come.
The gift of the worm.
The gift of the worm? Tell me more.
Well, there's a chest out there that maybe requires some special ability.
Maybe. And if we come back to our in-game view, definitely starting to use the environment to tell a story about Oryx's majesty. I mean, this is one of the more ornate, beautiful environments that we've seen, you know, and just the stairs leading up, this starts to feel more like you're in the king's court.
Right. One thing we strived for in the Dreadnought was to make it a place that players would want to spend a lot of time. It started out pretty brown, a little bit sullen, and so we did a big push to bring in more magical elements. If you look out over this chasm, you can see we've got kind of the pixie dust in the air.
Yeah, you guys just pulled the encounter, just so you know. They're attacking.
We're starting.
We got Baddock? Okay.
All right, we'll fight them.
We'll do some sightseeing in a minute. Let's clear the area.
Yeah, so here's another combatant introduction, the Hobgoblins. They're great for this environment. They have this long-range sniper weapon, which might encourage players to just sit back and pick them off, but then they have this other ability that when you damage them, they fire these heat-seeking projectiles. So I felt like that was a great combination here. It's gonna encourage you to move down into these areas that have cover. Like where we started is pretty open, and you're not gonna be able to take a defensive position. So those combatants are gonna pull you down into this choke point where you have to cross this narrow bridge, which is great because with the encounter, I'm trying to anticipate players making that decision and then having a counter prepared for the AI. So they put a lot of pressure on this narrow bridge section. They're the scions that are splitting and multiplying, and a taken captain that can really punish you for getting in close too early before you've thinned out his minions. Although we made that look pretty effortless in a Fire Team 3.
It's because we're awesome. That's an interesting point, though. You design activities that are good for fire teams, but also good for solar players if people embark on these missions by themselves. That's a consideration that you make as a designer.
Yeah, totally. And in this activity, I mean, we're about to go into the encounter with Oryx's henchmen. where the challenger level is really escalating. But I felt it was appropriate for the final mission against the Taken King. We didn't want it to feel like it was a foregone conclusion that you're going to overcome all these obstacles, right? So it's balancing that challenge level for all tiers of player experience.
And then Hops, what were you telling me before we were
Sure.
so rudely interrupted by those Taken?
Yeah.
What were you telling me about the world that we see out there?
Well, we made an effort to bring a lot of color into an environment that could have otherwise been very brown.
Yeah.
So you can see the lighting team brought in some really nice color. If you pull your ghost out, you'll see some ways to get out there outside the normal gameplay area.
Yeah, there they are. All right, are we ready?
Let's do it.
I'm following you. I'm going to occupy my usual spot in the rear with the gear. And there's the man.
This encounter presents a fair amount of challenge, and it's funny that internally we talked about them as Bebop and Rocksteady before.
Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where that
Talk
came
about
from.
a working title.
Well, it kind of encapsulates the concept of them, right? They're
Yeah.
his henchmen, and you develop a relationship with them throughout the campaign. You encounter them individually, and then here you're forced to fight them together, which was a novel experience.
He's not very pleased about that.
In Destiny, you've never been forced to take on two ultras at once before.
No.
I just remember early on working with other content creators, and they'd come to me with questions about these guys, and they're like, "So which one is Bebop? Which one is Rocksteady?"
Yeah.
And I remember never being able to keep it straight. I always thought of, well, Rocksteady was a rhinoceros, and the Cabal are kind of rhino-like, so that's how I.
Yeah, the war rhinos. Not space turtles, but war rhinos. And I'm out.
Another one by Adrian Myshak.
Nice.
This was an earlier concept for this, so there was some changes made to it, but we brought in a lot of those elements like the waterfalls, which are actually going in reverse. And if we come back to game, you can see how that has changed.
They're flowing upwards.
Yeah, the waterfalls
Yeah.
are flowing upward. Everything is flowing in, including the combatants, right?
Yep.
This whole moment is like an invitation. You come into this beautiful space, everybody sort of withdraws into the king's chamber,
Right.
almost as if to say, come with me.
And he rolls
Yeah.
out the red carpet. These
Yeah.
bridges don't have to be scanned.
Yeah, it's just, oh, let me make this easy for you because you have pissed me off enough that we're going to fight now. And this is beautiful. I mean, this is just, you're getting like gold filigreed steps.
That palette is starting to show up.
Nothing more ominous than a really, really big door.
How about a completely dark hallway?
Where am I going? Where am I going? Well, you're not going that way. All right, meet you on the other side.
Yeah, so I can talk a bit about the final boss encounter here. In a number of ways, we really wanted to take our boss experience another level, improve it, boss 2.0. And so that awesome introduction is part of it. You know, the visual effects team, Spec Ops team, did a ton of work to create all the components of him drawing in his power and revealing himself and the flame hallway.
He draws the darkness into himself, almost suggesting that darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's a substance.
And then there was another goal of this encounter to have Oryx's actual participation become more direct over time.
And again, here, just to take a look at this, I mean, we've seen, hello, I'm looking at Art and he's right on top of me. We've seen this room in cinematics. We've seen him sort of conducting his army and firing his weapon from this platform. And now that we're here, it's obviously serious business. Hello.
This was inspired by my irrational fear of sharks. And so I really wanted to channel that sense of, being helpless, being in the water. There's this apex predator that's circling you, and he's still sort of toying with you. He's going to come in and make these lethal strikes.
Thump, 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 thump. Okay, yep, that's a lethal strike. Here he comes.
It sets up the opportunity for that sort of bull rush moment where you put the final blow in.
Although I was able to finish this on the take home. I remember texting Luke afterwards going, that was really hard, man. He's like, that was perfect.
Yeah. You're going to get that super experience when you're playing this solo. It'll all time out just right.
There we go. Good job, fellows.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Good job, nicely done. So talk to me about what's happening here.
Yeah, so
Is he
again,
dying?
From the Books of Sorrow, it explains that here he's actually taking himself, and that inverts his throne realm into the Dreadnought, and then eventually we're able to access his throne realm through the Court of Oryx because of that.
And it's at this moment that he quite literally becomes the Taken King. He becomes Taken himself, and this sets us up for the raid that follows.
Right.
So he becomes
Not truly gone.
not truly gone. He achieves his final form and beckons you to come and find him in the King's Fall raid.
Right.
And perhaps we'll play that another time. But for today, this has been our ride along of the Dreadnought. We scratched the surface. We did not see all of the Dreadnought, but it's a big place, a ship older than time.
Right.
So it's been our pleasure to walk you around and talk to these guys and to hear from them what they think about when they make your games, what inspires them, what challenges them, how their creative process evolves over time. As a fan of Bungie games for a long time, I love stuff like this. I hope you do too. So it's my pleasure to thank senior world artist Andrew Hops.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging
It's
out.
fun.
Thanks for building the Dreadnought. And senior designer Brian Frank, thanks for filling it up with
Thanks for having us.
danger and agony and treasure
No problem.
and mysteries and secrets.
We'll do it again.
All right. All right. This has been a Bungie Ride Along. I'm Deej. It's been my pleasure to host you. We will be back next week. We're going to have a conversation with our audio team. This week, we suppressed the audio, the game audio, so that we could talk to these fine gentlemen. Next week, the audio and the things that you hear when you play will be front and center. We'll talk to the composers, we'll talk to the sound effects creators, we'll talk to the designers, may even talk to some of the actors. So tune in for that. Pay attention to the Bungie blog or any of our social media channels for updates on exactly when that show will happen. And, of course, let's talk about the fact that players of Destiny want new things to do. We have an entire team of people upstairs making new content for you to play. Over a longer timeline, we will be talking to you about that. There is a plan in the works for a spring update, and we'll start unveiling some of those details on a show just like this in the weeks to come. So please join us for future opportunities to learn more about Bungie and how we make games on Twitch. We'd be glad to have you.